Emma Granger felt her throat tighten as she stared at the signature on her eviction notice. Bennett Nash, the millionaire developer who was buying up every property in the neighborhood and transforming them into luxury condominiums nobody in this community could afford. Her fingers trembled as she read the cold, impersonal letter, informing her that she had 30 days to vacate the flower shop she'd poured her heart and savings into over the past 5 years. "I'm sorry, Emma," her landlord, Mrs. Patel, said softly. "He made an offer I couldn't refuse, my husband's medical bills." Emma forced a smile. "I understand." "It's not your fault." She folded the notice carefully and slipped it into her pocket. "I should get back to work. Those wedding arrangements won't make themselves." The bell chimed as Mrs. Patel left. Emma waited until the door closed before allowing her shoulders to slump. The shop wasn't just her livelihood, it was her sanctuary. After losing her parents in a car accident 3 years ago, Blooming Wonderful had become her only constant. The thought of losing it made her feel like she was drowning. Her assistant, Olivia, peeked out from the back room. "Was that Mrs. Patel? Is everything okay?" "Fine," Emma lied, straightening her apron. "Just a rent thing, nothing to worry about." She busied herself arranging a display of fresh lilies, trying to ignore the panic bubbling in her chest. 30 days to find a new location in a neighborhood where commercial rents had doubled in the past year. It was impossible. She might have to close permanently. The shop door opened and Emma turned, customer service smile firmly in place. The smile froze when she saw who it was. He wasn't what she expected. Based on the impersonal eviction notice, Emma had imagined Bennett Nash as an older man with a receding hairline and cold eyes. The man who entered her shop couldn't have been more than 35, with dark hair and sharp blue eyes that took in every detail of her little store. "Welcome to Blooming Wonderful," she said, professional despite the anger simmering beneath her polite exterior. "How can I help you today?" "I'm looking for something special," he said, his voice deeper than she anticipated. "For my mother's birthday." Emma nodded, moving toward the cooler. "What does she like? Roses, lilies, something exotic, perhaps?" "Honestly, I have no idea," he admitted with a self-deprecating smile that momentarily disarmed her. "I'm terrible at this." "What would you recommend?" "It depends on what you want to express," Emma said, studying him. "Admiration, gratitude, love." "All of the above," he said. "She's put up with me for 36 years. That deserves something spectacular." Despite herself, Emma smiled. "In that case, let me put together something that will really wow her." As she selected flowers, she was acutely aware of him watching her. His suit probably cost more than her monthly rent, but he seemed uncomfortable in it, tugging at his tie when he thought she wasn't looking. "You have an amazing eye," he commented as she arranged vibrant peonies with sprays of delicate baby's breath. "How long have you owned this place?" 5 years, Emma replied, keeping her voice neutral, though not for much longer. "Oh, are you expanding to a larger location?" Emma's fingers stilled for a moment. He didn't know who she was. "Not exactly. The building's been sold. I have to be out in 30 days. "That's unfortunate," he said, and he sounded genuinely sympathetic. "This neighborhood is changing fast." "Yes," Emma agreed, biting back what she really wanted to say. "It certainly is." She finished the arrangement, wrapping it carefully. "Would you like to add a card?" He pulled out a sleek leather wallet. "Please, to Mom, with all my love, Bennett." Emma nearly dropped the card. She looked up at him sharply, but his expression remained pleasantly unaware. "You're Bennett Nash," she said, the words escaping before she could stop them. His eyebrows rose slightly. "I am. Have we met before?" "No," Emma said, her voice tight. "But I received a letter signed by you this morning. I'm Emma Granger. You're evicting me from my shop." Bennett's smile disappeared, replaced by a look of genuine surprise. "I'm sorry. What?" "This building," Emma said, gesturing around her beloved shop. "Your company purchased it. I have 30 days to vacate." Bennett frowned. "I buy a lot of properties, Ms. Granger. My team handles the details." He looked around, seeming to actually see the shop for the first time. "I wasn't aware this was one of them." "Well, it is," Emma said, ringing up his purchase with more force than necessary. "That'll be $75. He handed over his credit card, looking troubled. I apologize for the way you found out. That's not how we usually handle these transitions. Does it matter how you deliver the news when the result is the same? Emma asked, handing him his receipt. I lose everything either way. Bennett accepted the bouquet, his expression unreadable. Perhaps we could discuss this further. I'd like to understand more about your situation. There's nothing to discuss, Mr. Nash. Your letter was quite clear. Emma gestured to the door. I hope your mother enjoys the flowers. For a moment, he looked like he might say something else, but instead, he nodded and left. Emma watched through the window as he got into a sleek black car that probably cost more than she'd make in 5 years. Who was that? Olivia asked, coming out from the back room. He was gorgeous. That, Emma said grimly, was the man who's destroying our neighborhood, and he just bought our flowers. The rest of the day passed in a blur of customers and arrangements. Emma worked on autopilot, her mind racing through options that all led to the same dead end. By closing time, she was exhausted and no closer to a solution. She locked up and started the short walk to her apartment, just 2 blocks from the shop. Another small blessing she'd soon lose. She'd have to move further out, away from the heart of the city she loved. Ms. Granger, Emma turned to see Bennett Nash stepping out of his car. She considered pretending she hadn't heard him, but curiosity got the better of her. Mr. Nash, she acknowledged coldly. I'd like to talk to you about your shop, he said, approaching her on the sidewalk. I've been thinking about our conversation all day. There's nothing to talk about. You want the building, you bought it, and now I have to leave. What if there was another option? Bennett suggested. I looked into your business after I left. You've built something special here. The community loves your shop. Emma crossed her arms. Is this the part where you offer me a spot in your new development at triple the rent? Actually, I want to offer you a partnership, Bennett said. My company is launching a retail initiative focused on preserving local businesses during our redevelopments. We'd provide space at your current rent, plus investment capital to help you expand. Emma stared at him in disbelief. Why would you do that? Because gentrification without preservation of local culture creates soulless neighborhoods, he said. And because I think you're exactly the kind of entrepreneur we want to work with. And what do you get out of it? Good PR, he admitted frankly, and the satisfaction of doing something right for a change. Emma shook her head. I don't need your charity, Mr. Nash. It's not charity, it's business, Bennett insisted. Look, at least let me buy you dinner so we can discuss it properly. No strings attached. Emma hesitated. She should say no. Bennett Nash represented everything she despised about urban development. But if there was even a small chance she could save her shop, fine, she agreed reluctantly. One dinner to discuss business. Bennett's smile was unexpectedly warm. Perfect. Are you free tomorrow night? I know a great little Italian place nearby. Tomorrow works, Emma said, still uncertain if she was making a huge mistake. I'll pick you up at 7, Bennett said. And Ms. Granger, thank you for giving me a chance to make this right. Emma watched him drive away, wondering what she'd gotten herself into. She'd meant to stay as far away from Bennett Nash as possible, but somehow she'd agreed to have dinner with him instead. It was strictly business, she reminded herself firmly, nothing more. The next day, Emma arrived early at the shop, determined to research Bennett Nash and his company thoroughly before their dinner. What she found was confusing. Nash Development had a reputation for aggressive acquisition and development, but also for innovative community initiatives and sustainable building practices. Articles described Bennett as both ruthlessly ambitious and surprisingly philanthropic. By closing time, Emma was more confused than ever. She hurried home to change, settling on a simple navy dress that was professional but not too formal. At precisely 7, her doorbell rang. Bennett stood on her doorstep, looking more relaxed in dark jeans and a charcoal blazer. His eyes widened slightly when he saw her. You look lovely, he said, his voice sincere. Thank you, Emma replied, feeling oddly flustered. Shall we go? The restaurant was cozy and authentic, tucked away on a side street. The owner greeted Bennett by name, leading them to a quiet corner table. You come here often? Emma asked as they settled in. My grandmother lived in this neighborhood, Bennett explained. She used to bring me here when I was a kid. Best carbonara in the city. I didn't know you had roots here, Emma said, surprised. Bennett smiled ruefully. There's a lot you don't know about me, Ms. Granger. Emma, please. If we're discussing a potential partnership, we should be on first-name terms. Emma, he repeated, and something about the way he said her name made her stomach flutter. And I'm Bennett, not Mr. Nash. That's my father. Over appetizers, Bennett outlined his proposal. Emma listened skeptically at first, but the more he explained, the more intrigued she became. His retail preservation program would allow her to keep her shop in the same neighborhood, with a 5-year lease at her current rent. The catch was that she would need to expand her business model to include workshops and community events. You've clearly put a lot of thought into this, Emma said, impressed despite herself. I spent most of last night researching your business and the local flower market, Bennett admitted. You have something special, Emma. Your customer reviews are phenomenal, and your social media presence shows real creativity. Emma blushed slightly at the praise. I love what I do. It shows. That's rare these days. Bennett leaned forward. So, what do you think of the proposal? Honestly, it sounds too good to be true, Emma said. Why me? There are dozens of businesses being displaced by your developments. Bennett was quiet for a moment. Would you believe me if I said it was the way you handled those peonies? Emma laughed. No. Fair enough? He smiled, then grew serious. The truth is, meeting you yesterday made me realize something. I've become disconnected from the impact of my company's actions. I review spreadsheets and property values, but I don't see the people affected by our decisions. And one conversation with me changed that? Emma asked skeptically. Not entirely, Bennett admitted, but it was a wake-up call. I started this company to build something meaningful, not to destroy communities. Somewhere along the way, I lost sight of that. Their main courses arrived, momentarily pausing the conversation. Emma studied Bennett as he thanked the server. There was an earnestness to him that didn't fit her preconception of a ruthless developer. Tell me about your background, she said. How does someone become a millionaire property developer before 40? Bennett chuckled. I'm 36 for the record. And it wasn't exactly the plan. I studied architecture initially. I wanted to design beautiful, functional spaces. What changed? My father died unexpectedly when I was 25, Bennett said, his expression sobering. He left me his struggling construction company and a mountain of debt. I had to learn business fast, or lose everything he'd built. I'm sorry about your father, Emma said softly. Thank you. Bennett took a sip of wine. What about you? How did you end up running a flower shop? Emma smiled, thinking back. Pure stubbornness mainly. I was working in corporate marketing, hating every minute of it. When my grandmother died, she left me a small inheritance. Everyone told me I was crazy to open a flower shop with no experience, but I did it anyway. And you made it work, Bennett observed. That's impressive. It hasn't been easy, Emma admitted. But I've never regretted it, until now, when I might lose it all. Bennett set down his fork. You won't lose it, Emma. If my proposal doesn't work for you, we'll find another solution. Emma wanted to believe him, but caution held her back. Why does it matter to you? Because I'm trying to be better, he said simply. Better than the soulless developer everyone assumes I am. Better than the shortcuts my company has sometimes taken. Just better. The raw honesty in his voice caught Emma off guard. For the first time, she saw beyond the wealthy businessman to the person underneath someone who was perhaps as complicated as she was. After dinner, Bennett insisted on walking her home. The spring evening was warm, the streetlights casting a golden glow over the historic buildings that lined her street, buildings that would soon be transformed by Nash development. This neighborhood has so much character, Emma said, gesturing to the mix of architectural styles. That's what drew me here in the first place. It feels like every building has a story. They do, Bennett agreed. That's what I miss about architecture, understanding the narrative of a space, how it shapes the lives within it. They reached Emma's door too quickly. She turned to face him, suddenly aware of how comfortable their evening had been. Thank you for dinner, she said, and for the proposal. I'd like some time to think about it, if that's all right. Of course, Bennett replied. Take all the time you need. I can have the formal offer sent over tomorrow for you to review. That would be helpful. Emma hesitated, then added, "This wasn't at all what I expected, Bennett. In a good way, I hope. I'm reserving judgment," she said with a small smile. "But yes, in a good way." Bennett's answering smile made her heart beat a little faster. "Good night, Emma." "Good night." Emma watched him walk away before letting herself into her apartment. She leaned against the closed door, trying to sort through her conflicted feelings. Bennett Nash was nothing like she'd imagined, and that made him all the more dangerous. The next morning, Emma arrived at her shop earlier than usual, needing the comfort of her flowers and the routine of opening up. As she unlocked the door, she noticed a small package on the doorstep with her name on it. Inside was a beautiful potted orchid and a handwritten note. "Emma, thank you for a wonderful evening. Looking forward to our partnership, whatever form it takes. Bennett." Emma placed the orchid on her counter, unable to stop the small smile that formed. The formal proposal arrived by courier an hour later, and Emma spent her lunch break reviewing it carefully. To her surprise, it was exactly as Bennett had described: fair, thoughtful, and potentially beneficial for her business. She was still mulling it over when the shop door opened, and a woman in her 60s entered, her elegant appearance immediately catching Emma's attention. "Welcome to Blooming Wonderful," Emma greeted warmly. "Thank you, dear," the woman said, glancing around appreciatively. "What a charming shop. I can see why my son was so impressed." Emma's heart skipped. "Your son?" "Bennett Nash," the woman confirmed with a smile that instantly reminded Emma of Bennett. "I'm Eleanor Nash. He sent me the most beautiful arrangement yesterday and couldn't stop talking about the talented florist who created it." "Oh," Emma said, flustered. "That's very kind of him." "Bennett rarely gives compliments he doesn't mean," Eleanor said, studying a display of tulips. "He also mentioned you might be working together on his new community retail initiative." "We've discussed it," Emma acknowledged cautiously. Eleanor nodded, seemingly pleased. "Good. That program was Bennett's idea, you know. The board thought he was crazy, investing in small businesses when we could maximize profit with national chains. But Bennett has always been stubborn when he believes in something." Emma wasn't sure how to respond. Eleanor Nash didn't fit her expectations any more than Bennett had. "May I ask why you're here, Mrs. Nash?" she finally asked. "Eleanor, please," the older woman corrected. "And I'm here because I wanted to meet the woman who made such an impression on my son. Bennett has been different lately, distant, focused on expansion at the expense of everything else." She touched a peony gently. "Yesterday was the first time in months I've seen a spark of the passionate architect he used to be." Emma felt her face warm. "I think you're giving me too much credit. We only had one conversation." "Sometimes that's all it takes," Eleanor said enigmatically. "Now, I'd like to order several arrangements for a charity luncheon I'm hosting next week. Can you help me with that?" By the time Eleanor left, having placed a substantial order, Emma's head was spinning. She'd expected to dislike Bennett's mother as much as she'd initially disliked him, but Eleanor was charming and genuine, just like her son had turned out to be. That evening, Emma called the number Bennett had left on his card. He answered on the second ring. "Emma," he said, sounding pleased. "Have you had a chance to review the proposal?" "I have," she replied. "It's very generous. But I'm still not sure why you're doing this," Emma admitted. "Your mother came into my shop today." There was a pause. "Did she? That's interesting timing." "She seems to think I've had some profound effect on you," Emma said, unable to keep the skepticism from her voice. Bennett sighed. "My mother has always had a flair for the dramatic, but she's not entirely wrong. Meeting you did make me reconsider some things." "One conversation shouldn't have that much impact," Emma insisted. "What if it wasn't just the conversation?" Bennett asked quietly. "What if it was you?" Emma's breath caught. "Bennett, I know it sounds crazy," he continued quickly, "but from the moment you started arranging those flowers, completely in your element, something just clicked. I saw someone who had found their purpose, who was creating beauty instead of just profit. It made me remember why I got into this business in the first place. To build something meaningful," Emma recalled his words from dinner. "Exactly. Somewhere along the way, I lost sight of that. Meeting you was a reminder of what really matters." Emma didn't know how to respond. Part of her was drawn to his sincerity, while another part remained wary of being charmed by a man whose business practices had threatened her livelihood. "I need to know something," she finally said. "If I accept your proposal, is this strictly professional? Because I'm getting mixed signals here." Bennett was quiet for a moment. "I would be lying if I said I wasn't attracted to you, Emma. But I also respect you and your business too much to complicate things. If you want this to be purely professional, that's what it will be." His honesty was disarming. "I think that would be best," Emma said, even as something inside her protested. "At least for now, while we see if this partnership can work." "I understand," Bennett said, his voice warm despite the gentle rejection. "So, does this mean you're accepting the proposal?" Emma took a deep breath. "Yes. I'd like to move forward with it." "That's fantastic," Bennett said, his enthusiasm evident. "I'll have my team start on the paperwork right away. We can meet next week to discuss the transition details." "That sounds good," Emma agreed. "And Bennett, thank you for the orchid. It's beautiful." "You're welcome," he said softly. "Good night, Emma." "Good night." Over the next few weeks, Emma found herself spending more time with Bennett than she'd anticipated. What had begun as business meetings about her shop's transition evolved into longer conversations that often had nothing to do with work. She learned that behind the successful businessman was a man with a wry sense of humor, a passion for old films, and a genuine desire to make a positive impact. The expansion of Blooming Wonderful was progressing smoothly. Bennett had introduced Emma to architects and retail consultants who were helping her design a space that would accommodate both her traditional flower shop and new workshop areas for classes and events. The plans were better than anything Emma could have imagined on her own. One evening, after reviewing the latest design proposals, they ended up walking through the neighborhood, talking about their childhoods and dreams. "I always wanted a garden when I was a kid," Emma admitted as they strolled past a community park. "We lived in an apartment, so my mom let me grow herbs on the windowsill. It wasn't much, but it was mine." Bennett smiled at her. "And now you're surrounded by flowers every day." "Life's funny that way," Emma agreed. "What about you? Did you always want to build things?" "Always," Bennett confirmed. "I was obsessed with Lego as a kid. My father used to take me to construction sites on weekends. I loved watching buildings come together, piece by piece." "You must miss the hands-on part of architecture," Emma observed. Bennett nodded, his expression wistful. "More than I realized until recently. That's why I've started sketching again in the evenings." "Really? I'd love to see your work sometime." Bennett looked sheepish. "It's pretty rusty, but maybe someday." They reached a small cafe that was still open, its warm light spilling onto the sidewalk. "Coffee?" Bennett suggested. "Or is it too late?" "Never too late for coffee," Emma replied with a smile. Inside, they found a quiet corner table. As they waited for their drinks, Emma noticed Bennett watching her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. "What?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious. "Nothing," he said, then seemed to reconsider. "Actually, no, not nothing. I was just thinking how glad I am that you gave me a chance, despite your initial impression of me." Emma smiled. "You didn't exactly give me a choice. You're very persistent, Mr. Nash." "One of my better qualities," he agreed with a grin, "though my sister would call it stubbornness." "You have a sister?" "Claire. She's 2 years younger, lives in Chicago with her husband and twins." Bennett pulled out his phone, showing Emma a picture of a smiling woman with 2 toddlers. "She's the sensible one in the family, always tells me when I'm being an idiot," which is apparently quite often. Emma laughed. "I like her already." Their coffee arrived, and the conversation flowed easily. Emma found herself sharing stories she rarely told anyone about her parents' accident, her struggles in the first year of business, her dreams for the future. "I've talked too much," she said finally, realizing how long they'd been sitting there. "I could listen to you all night," Bennett said, his eyes sincere. "You're remarkable, Emma. The way you've built this business, how you connect with people through your work, it's special." Emma felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Thank you. But I think you're giving me too much credit. And I think you don't give yourself enough," Bennett countered gently. The air between them seemed to change, charged with something neither of them had acknowledged. Emma knew she should pull back, maintain the professional boundary they had agreed on. But sitting across from Bennett, seeing the warmth in his eyes, That boundary felt increasingly arbitrary. "It's getting late," she said reluctantly. "I should probably head home." Bennett nodded, though he seemed as reluctant as she felt. "I'll walk you." Outside, the night had grown cooler. Emma shivered slightly, and without hesitation, Bennett removed his jacket and draped it around her shoulders. "Such a gentleman," she teased, though she was touched by the gesture. "My grandmother would haunt me if I behaved otherwise," Bennett replied with a smile. She was very specific about how a man should treat a woman. "She sounds like she was quite something." "She was," Bennett agreed. "She would have liked you." They walked slowly, neither seeming eager for the evening to end. When they reached Emma's apartment, she slipped off his jacket and handed it back with a smile. "Thank you for tonight," she said. "It was lovely." Bennett took the jacket, his fingers brushing against hers. "It was. Maybe we could do it again sometime. Not for work, just dinner or something." Emma hesitated. Their partnership was going well, but dating complicated things. And yet, "I'd like that," she heard herself say. Bennett's smile was worth any risk. "Great. I'll call you tomorrow?" "Tomorrow," Emma agreed. On impulse, she leaned forward and kissed his cheek, a brief touch that nonetheless left her heart racing. "Good night, Bennett." "Good night, Emma," he replied, his voice softer than usual. As she closed her door, Emma leaned against it, a smile spreading across her face. She was falling for Bennett Nash, despite all her intentions to keep him at arm's length, and judging by the way he'd looked at her tonight, he was falling too. Their first official date was at a small farm-to-table restaurant just outside the city. Bennett picked Emma up in a vintage Mustang that made her raise her eyebrows. "Not what I expected," she commented as he held the door for her. "The sports car stereotype?" Bennett asked with a grin. "I saved that for impressing clients. This was my father's. Restoring it was our project before he got sick." Emma settled into the leather seat, touched by this glimpse into his past. "It's beautiful." The restaurant was housed in a converted barn, with twinkling lights strung across wooden beams and tables made from reclaimed wood. It was romantic without trying too hard, and Emma immediately loved it. "How did you find this place?" she asked as they were seated at a corner table. "One of our developments is nearby," Bennett explained. "I try to get to know the local businesses around our sites. The owner here, Marcus, is passionate about sustainable agriculture. They grow most of their own produce." "That's amazing," Emma said, genuinely impressed. "I try to source locally for my flowers whenever possible. It makes such a difference in quality and environmental impact." "Exactly," Bennett agreed enthusiastically. "That's something I've been pushing for in our residential developments too. Community gardens, green spaces. Cities need more connection to nature." Their conversation ranged widely through dinner, from sustainable building practices to their favorite books, from Emma's dreams for her expanded shop to Bennett's secret desire to design a home from scratch again someday. "Why don't you?" Emma asked. "You obviously still love architecture." Bennett swirled the wine in his glass. "Running the company takes all my time, and honestly, I'm not sure I'd be any good at it anymore. It's been years since I designed anything beyond basic concepts." "I don't believe that," Emma said firmly. "Talent doesn't just disappear. It might need some practice, but it's still there." Bennett looked at her appreciatively. "Has anyone ever told you that you're remarkably good for the ego, Emma Granger?" Emma laughed. "I think yours can handle a little boosting." After dinner, instead of heading directly back to the city, Bennett drove them to a scenic overlook. The city lights sprawled below them, a glittering tapestry against the night sky. "I come here sometimes to think," Bennett said as they stood at the railing. "It helps put things in perspective." Emma nodded, understanding exactly what he meant. "It's like looking at stars. It makes your problems seem smaller." "And yet," Bennett said quietly, "some things feel bigger." He turned to face her, his expression serious in the dim light. "Emma, I need to be honest with you. This partnership, the retail initiative, it's not just about business for me anymore. I care about you, more than I should, probably." Emma's heart raced. "I care about you too," she admitted. "I tried not to. I had all these preconceptions about who you were." "The evil developer," Bennett supplied with a rueful smile. "Something like that," Emma acknowledged. "But you're not who I thought you were. You're—" She searched for the right words. "You're someone who builds things that matter." Bennett stepped closer, his hand finding hers in the darkness. I want to build something with you, Emma. Not just your shop, not just this partnership. Something more. I want that too, Emma whispered. Bennett's kiss was gentle at first, a question she answered by stepping closer, her hands moving to his shoulders as his arms encircled her waist. The kiss deepened, conveying everything they'd been holding back these past weeks. When they finally broke apart, Emma was breathless. Bennett rested his forehead against hers, his voice low and intimate. I've wanted to do that since the day you arranged those peonies. Emma laughed softly. I wanted to throw those peonies at you that day. I probably deserved it, Bennett admitted, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. I'm glad you showed restraint. Me too, Emma agreed, pulling him down for another kiss. The drive back to the city was filled with a new awareness between them. Bennett held Emma's hand whenever he could, and she found herself watching his profile in the dim glow of the dashboard, wondering how the man she'd once resented had become someone she couldn't imagine not having in her life. At her door, their goodnight kiss lingered, full of promise and possibility. Dinner tomorrow? Bennett asked, reluctant to leave. I'd love that, Emma replied, but it's my turn to choose the place. Bennett grinned. Deal. The following weeks were a whirlwind of work and romance. As the renovations on Emma's shop progressed, so did her relationship with Bennett. They fell into an easy rhythm, spending evenings together whenever their schedules allowed, discovering shared interests and navigating the occasional disagreement with growing understanding. Emma introduced Bennett to her friends, who were skeptical at first, but warmed to him when they saw how he looked at her. Bennett took Emma to corporate events where she charmed his colleagues with her straightforward manner and quiet confidence. 1 month before the grand reopening of Blooming Wonderful in its new location, Bennett invited Emma to his home for the first time. His penthouse was sleek and modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the city. But it was the small architectural studio he'd set up in the spare bedroom that truly captured Emma's attention. So, this is where you've been sketching, she said, examining the drafting table and carefully arranged supplies. Bennett nodded, suddenly self-conscious. It's still a work in progress. May I? Emma asked, gesturing to a portfolio on the desk. At Bennett's nod, she opened it to find detailed sketches of buildings, each with a distinctive character that somehow managed to both honor traditional architecture and incorporate modern elements. They were beautiful. Thoughtful designs that revealed a talent Emma had suspected but hadn't fully appreciated until now. Bennett, these are amazing, she said, turning the pages carefully. Why aren't you doing this professionally? Bennett shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. The company needs me. But does this part of you need the company? Emma asked gently. You light up when you talk about design, Bennett. I've never seen you as passionate as when you're discussing the details of a building's character or the flow of a space. Bennett was quiet for a moment. I've been thinking about stepping back, he finally admitted. Not completely, but enough to take on some design projects again. Claire has been running more of the operational side already. That sounds perfect, Emma said, squeezing his hand. You deserve to do what you love. Bennett pulled her close. I am, he said softly. Right now. Later, over dinner on his balcony, Bennett seemed preoccupied. Emma waited patiently, knowing he would share his thoughts when ready. There's something I need to tell you, he finally said, setting down his wineglass. About the shop. Emma tensed. Is there a problem with the renovations? No, everything's on schedule, Bennett assured her quickly. It's about how the deal came together. He took a deep breath. The truth is, I knew exactly which building your shop was in when I came in that day. I'd seen you before, actually, several times. Emma frowned, confused. What do you mean? I'd driven by your shop a few times, Bennett admitted. I saw you working through the window. You looked so content. It made me curious. He ran a hand through his hair, clearly uncomfortable with the confession. I was planning to introduce myself properly, but then the acquisition moved faster than expected. That's why I came in that day to see the place before the deal closed. You knew who I was when you bought those flowers, Emma said slowly. Bennett nodded, his expression apprehensive. I did. And then when you told me I was evicting you, I realized what an ass I was being. That's when I decided to fast-track the retail initiative we'd been considering. I wanted to make it right. Emma sat back, processing this revelation. So our meeting wasn't just a coincidence. The timing was, Bennett insisted. I had no idea you'd received the notice that day, but me coming into your shop wasn't random. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. Emma was quiet for a long moment. Part of her was unsettled by the idea that Bennett had noticed her before she knew him, but another part recognized the honesty it took to admit this now, when things were going so well between them. Why tell me this now? She finally asked. Bennett met her gaze directly. Because I'm falling in love with you, Emma, and I don't want there to be any secrets between us. Emma's breath caught. Despite the weeks they'd spent together, neither had used the word love until now. Say something, Bennett urged when she remained silent. Instead of speaking, Emma stood and moved around the table, taking his face in her hands and kissing him deeply. When she pulled back, she saw the question in his eyes. I'm falling in love with you too, she whispered, and I appreciate your honesty, even if your timing is a bit dramatic. Relief washed over Bennett's face. So, you're not angry? I'm processing, Emma admitted. But no, not angry. We all have our awkward beginnings, I suppose. Bennett pulled her onto his lap, holding her close. I promise, no more secrets, just us, building something real together. Emma rested her head on his shoulder, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't expected. I like the sound of that. The grand reopening of Blooming Wonderful exceeded all of Emma's expectations. The new space was twice the size of her original shop, with a dedicated area for workshops and events, and a charming courtyard garden Bennett had insisted on adding to the design. On opening day, the shop was filled with flowers, customers, and well-wishers. Bennett stayed by Emma's side throughout, helping where needed, but mostly watching with pride as she guided visitors through the new space. This is amazing, Em, Olivia said, taking a rare break from the register. I've already booked 12 people for the first terrarium workshop. And the wedding consultation calendar is filling up fast, Emma replied happily. I think this might actually work. Of course it will work, Bennett said, appearing beside her with fresh coffee. You've created something special here. Emma smiled up at him, still amazed sometimes by how things had turned out. The man she'd once considered her enemy was now the person she trusted most in the world. As the day wound down and the last customers left, Emma found Bennett in the courtyard garden, examining a trellis of climbing roses. You did it, he said as she approached. First day as the new Blooming Wonderful was a complete success. We did it, Emma corrected, slipping her arm around his waist. I couldn't have done this without you. Bennett turned to face her, his expression suddenly serious. There's something I've been wanting to ask you. Emma's heart skipped. Oh? I've been thinking about what you said about doing what I love, Bennett began, taking her hands in his. And I've made some decisions. About the architecture? Emma guessed. Partly, Bennett confirmed. I'm officially stepping back to a strategic role at Nash Development. Claire is taking over as CEO, and I'm launching a small design firm focused on community spaces. Bennett, that's wonderful, Emma exclaimed. I'm so proud of you. I wouldn't have had the courage without you, he said softly. You showed me it was possible to build a life around passion, not just profit. Emma squeezed his hands. You always had it in you. There's more, Bennett continued, looking nervous now. The first project I want to take on is a house. Our house, if you want. Emma's eyes widened. Our house? I love you, Emma, Bennett said, his voice steady despite the vulnerability in his eyes. These past months have been the happiest of my life. I want to build a future with you literally and figuratively. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Emma's breath caught as he opened it to reveal a vintage ring with a stunning emerald surrounded by small diamonds. It was my grandmother's, Bennett explained. The woman who taught me that integrity matters more than success, and that love is worth any risk. He dropped to one knee on the garden path they'd designed together. Emma Granger, will you marry me? Tears filled Emma's eyes as joy bubbled up inside her. Yes, she whispered, then louder. Yes! Bennett slipped the ring onto her finger, then stood and pulled her into a kiss that promised a lifetime of love. When they broke apart, Both were smiling through tears. "I tried so hard to stay away from you," Emma confessed, resting her forehead against his. "I never imagined you'd become my whole world. And I never thought I'd risk everything for a stubborn florist who initially hated me," Bennett replied with a tender smile. "But I'd do it all again in a heartbeat." "Me too," Emma agreed, kissing him again. Every single moment. They were married 6 months later in the courtyard garden of Blooming Wonderful, surrounded by the flowers Emma had arranged herself and the people they loved most. Bennett's sister Claire served as his best woman, while Olivia stood as Emma's maid of honor. True to his word, Bennett designed their home, a beautiful modern farmhouse on a piece of land just outside the city, with gardens Emma could fill with every flower imaginable and a studio where Bennett could create. As Nash development evolved under Claire's leadership to focus more on community-conscious building, Bennett's architectural firm gained recognition for innovative designs that balanced beauty and functionality. 2 years after their wedding, Emma and Bennett welcomed a daughter, Lily, who grew up surrounded by flowers and blueprints, learning to appreciate both beauty and structure. The little family flourished, rooted in the love that had begun with a reluctant dinner and blossomed into a partnership neither had imagined possible. On their 5th anniversary, Bennett surprised Emma with a special gift, a portfolio containing the complete architectural plans for Blooming Wonderful's expansion, along with photos documenting every stage of construction. "Our first project together," Bennett said, as they looked through it on the porch swing of their home. The beginning of everything. Emma leaned against his shoulder, their daughter asleep upstairs and their future stretching before them like an open road. "And to think I once tried so hard to stay away from you." Bennett laughed softly, kissing the top of her head. "Lucky for both of us, you failed spectacularly." "Lucky indeed," Emma agreed, turning to kiss him properly. "I love you, Bennett Nash." "And I love you, Emma Nash," he replied. "More than anything I've ever built or ever will." From enemies to partners to lovers, their journey had been unexpected but perfect in its own way. Emma had tried to stay away, never realizing that the millionaire would risk everything: his company, his reputation, even his carefully guarded heart for her. But in the end, what they had built together was stronger and more beautiful than anything either could have created alone.